All right. Good morning, my friends. Sorry about that. So, for some reason, OBS decided to change what it was using for its audio input, and nothing was going through for the first, 20, 30 seconds. That's just, oh my God. Sorry about that. It does that sometimes. I don't know why. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me for these morning shows is your co-host, Spaz.
As always, powered by caffeine, and not enough of it.
I'm really tempted to contact Monster Energy, I swear to you, and say, hey, can you sponsor us? Because I swear, they fuel these shows. Folks, before we get started with our guest, we haven't done a show in a little bit, and I just wanted to apologize for that. There was a bit of burnout on my part, I must admit, and also some of our... there were a couple times where we weren't feeling well, and Hunter's still out for his move. So, for a couple weeks, it just didn't come together. We couldn't think of a really fun, it just didn't feel like we weren't feeling it, So, if you're not feeling it, why do it? Why half-ass it? You know what I mean? That's no fun for everyone. Morning, Shogun. Morning, Thorsten. And so we decided to just not have shows for a couple weeks, and I apologize for that. But now we're back. We have a guest this weekend next. My God, right? Joining us. Wait, where are you calling from? You're in England. Where in England?
Yeah, I'm in the UK.
Yeah, where in the UK?
I'm in Kent, just a few score miles out of London.
I watch so much British television. I know where Kent is. I'm not even kidding you. It's interesting, though. So much British television uses fake locations, and then so much British television uses real locations that sometimes I get confused. I will admit.
Guess so.
Oh, that's a great comment, Shogun. A British studio making a game about angry royals in space. Angry drunk royals, if you watch my videos. Jesus. We're welcoming back Glen Pawley to talk about Star Dynasties. We had Glen on a couple of years ago. And
thanks for having me. I'm really, really glad to be back.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Now that you're on Steam and you have I don't think you even had a publisher last time.
Not at all. No one knew about me. I think you were the first person to reach out.
Yeah, I have to say we're not just me. We're very lucky to have such a community that they find stuff. I don't know how they do it, but they will find stuff in the tiniest corner of itch or on IndieDB. They will find stuff. And I don't remember whether I found this or someone else found this back a couple years ago, but character-driven, that's what I call them at least, character-driven strategy games like these. Yeah. There aren't a ton of them, and there aren't a ton of space ones, especially. So we love these kind of games. We love these character-driven strategy games. So, of course, when we first found out about your game, we all got super excited.
Oh yes.
And now that we've actually gotten to play a more recent version of it, especially now that you have a publisher, Iceberg, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's Iceberg Interactive.
Congratulations. They are.
Thank you.
I have a soft spot in my heart for Iceberg because they give opportunity to indie space game developers like you. A lot of indie space games in Iceberg's catalog.
Yeah, they've been excellent to work with.
Yeah, they are great. So I got nothing but love for Iceberg. And they're not paying me to say that, and I'm not saying that because they give me free copies of games. I really do love that Iceberg supports developers like yourself. So, yeah. So that's awesome that you're now in their stable. Congratulations on that. And now you finally hit Steam Early Access as of about a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Mid-March. It's been an absolute whirlwind of a month.
I bet. Oh my God. I guess the first question how is that going? Because we are fascinated with Steam Early Access. We both love it and hate it. And when it's done well, we find it's an amazing experience for a developer. But doing it well is a real walking on a knife's edge. You know.
So far, I think it's really working for Star Dynasties. I mean, it was a tiny bit rocky at the beginning, and I think that's partly because I think a few people looked at the game and maybe got a little bit wrong impression of the game, thought we were more similar to Stellaris than we actually are. That was a little bit of a rocky start to navigate those expectations. But other than that, it's been a month of user feedback on every aspect of the game that's been really valuable. And it's not just about getting that user feedback, but on a personal level, I find that a really stimulating dynamic, that kind of constant interface with people that are playing your game, because obviously they keep you on your toes. You know, you can't hide and you can't run, and it's I find that very motivating.
Side note, I'm really sick of everyone comparing games to Stellaris. Like stop it, people. Stellaris is not the best. It never has been the best. It never will be the best. It's not the pinnacle of the genre, and it never will be. So open your minds and open your eyes.
Yeah, I'll say it does a few things well, but that said, yeah, they've changed how the game is multiple times already.
Yeah.
And we're not really sure exactly where they're going with it, but to be fair, it's getting better.
Is it?
But at the same time, I don't think it is the gold standard by which all other games should be.
No. I mean, it looks nice, and it has a great character, like a race builder. It's got a great race builder. But as a game,
Well, I haven't played the latest iteration of, because I know they've changed it multiple times, and I think the last time I played it extensively was probably like in 2018. So I honestly don't really know what it's like to play today, but I did enjoy it. I mean, I thought it was a good game. But my only real complaint in that department is that we're being compared to it, and we're being compared to it a little bit because, and this was in my blind spot, so it is partly my fault, because there are, a few screenshots of Star Dynasties do look a little bit like Stellaris. We chose a teal color for the UI, and the certain map views of Stellaris can look a little bit similar. I mean, if you read anything about the game, it should tell you it's a very different gameplay experience, because we're very focused on the characters and on the stories about the feudal politics and like the drama that happens to these characters. So it's a very different game, but that visual similarity can't help but create some expectations that we are struggling a little bit with.
That is not unfair. I mean, yeah, if you just look at a screenshot, you might be like, "Oh, it's Stellaris." Like I play this thing on my VR headset called Supernatural. It's a fitness program, and people are like, "Oh, it's just Beat Saber." Like, no, it's not just okay. Anyway, so yeah, it's tough because you got to have screenshots to help sell your thing, but at the same time, screenshots can only do so much, and sometimes they can, like you're saying, give kind of a wrong impression. There's this interesting game design school of thought, which maybe I should have respected a little bit more, which says that like every genre has its visual shorthand and codes. So when you look at a screenshot, you don't analyze it. You kind of immediately peg it into a certain gameplay styles. And sometimes games will go out of their way to choose an art style or a visual style specifically because they want to create a certain association with a genre in your mind when you look at a screenshot. Wow. Oh, wow.
And I guess I should have paid attention to that school of thought a little bit more.
Well, it's funny. I work in internet marketing, and I've never heard of this until today. But that makes perfect sense. I think
about it in terms of UI, Brian.
Yeah.
In terms of UI, if you have a UI that is equally intuitive to something that's gone before, it's iterative, but it looks very much the same as something that comes that has come before, then that is much more intuitive to the player coming into it because they've already played something like that before. There's it's easier onboarding for them.
That's true. I do have to say, one of my favorite things about your game is the UI. I love it so much because you use buttons that not everyone uses. Like, you use the middle mouse button. Oh my God. You use the middle mouse button. That blows me away. Like, so few strategy games use the middle mouse button. I mean, sure, they use the scroll wheel to to do the map, but like, you actually use the middle mouse button. Oh my God.
One of the biggest challenges that we had with the game, and that I had with the game, is that there's a lot of information to digest. Like, you're constantly being bombarded with these events about what happened to a particular character or what happened in a particular location. And there's a lot of data to digest. So a lot of the design on the UI has been kind of how to let the player get to that data as quickly as possible. So having some kind of button that allows you to instantly move the map to whatever you've clicked was just an intuitive thing to add.
It's so intuitive. It makes so much sense. And it works. It's great. Yeah, I was like, as I'm playing this, I'm like marveling at, because I'm kind of a UI nut. I love I love a good UI. And if a game has a really good UI, it will sear itself in my memory, because like, I've played games where the UI is just horrendous. It's like, this is like and I'm thinking, this is your game's primary way to talk to the player and to have the player interact with him. How did you mess this up so badly? But
UIs are very hard.
Oh, I know. I know. I've that's what I'm saying. I'm getting to that point. I have nothing but mad respect for anyone who makes let alone a competent UI. Let alone amazing. Your UI is it really is one of the things that I mean, your game has a lot of great things. Let me just throw that out there. It has a lot of great things, folks. But I'm a UI nut, and I loved the UI in your game so much. I mean, everything was clean. It was clear. You have tooltips everywhere, which I love tooltips so much. I mean, they take a lot of work. I know they take a lot of work to write them and implement them and everything. They take a ton of work, but any game that has tooltips over just about anything just gets my undying love. And so you have a ton of tooltips, lots of map modes, and yet the wonderful thing about it is there's so much to it, but it still isn't in your way. Like, it's amazing that you made it so fluid, because like, with so much information, like you said, you could have stumbled into a UI that was cumbersome and took up much more of the screen than it does, and whatnot. But like,
I think it's, as Spaz said, it's partly like you're not seeing the iteration that went into it. Like 2 years ago, when we had the same conversation, you struggled with the UI. Then and so you can see there's that evolutionary process where, because I've been working on the game for a long time, I've had plenty of time to see people basically really struggle with earlier iterations. And I have to give a shout out to Martin Nerurkar, who, because UI isn't actually my strong suit, and he helped me out a lot to make it a slicker experience.
Well, yeah, I honestly don't remember. I don't remember playing the last iteration, to be perfectly honest. Maybe the UI was part of that, but I gotta say, just dealing with the characters, like, just the right click to be able to click a character and have the actions pop up right there. I love that so much, because you have so many characters to deal with, and you could do so many different things with all of them. With each individual one of them, that's where
kind of the early access and the use for feedback process really comes into its own. Like, that right click action thing, I didn't have that idea. A playtester had that idea in one of the playtesting sessions we did last year. So it's like I said at the beginning, I have found that whenever we've done that kind of user feedback process, playtesters and players have come up with some really good ideas.
Yeah,
And a good UI will set up the stage for a good UX.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I work with websites all day, and UI and UX is such a big thing for me. Like, and even the smallest thing. I don't know about you guys. If you guys were, this is a side note. I work with WordPress sites all day. And one of the things about WordPress sites is if you're logged in, they give you a little bar at the top, so you could like do things like edit the page and everything. And I use that all the time to edit specific pages. Like, first I'll log in, and then I'll go to that specific page, and then I'll hit the edit page. It's so much easier than trying to search through WordPress's stupid ass search thing. And there are some clients we have where that is turned off, that bar at the top. I don't know why, but in their theme, it's turned off. And I'm like, what the F are you doing? Why? Why are you doing that? So it ruined both the UI and the UX for me. So yeah, it's so important. And that's amazing that a playtester came up with that idea. What are some other, just an offshoot question. What are some other great ideas playtesters have come up with out of curiosity?
Ooh, that's I think, a lot of the UI actually has been playtester driven, because most of my focus has always been on the world building and the storytelling and the events driven mechanic. And what happens to you is that when you play your game a lot because you're developing it, you kind of get used to the really clunky bits of it. And until someone comes and takes a look at it and goes, my God, how am I supposed to figure that out? Then you go, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to need to deal something about that. So this is kind of what I meant at the beginning, where obviously when a player encounters your game, especially when they encounter your game for the first time, they see things that are actually quite obvious, but you can't see them anymore at all. So the right-click action was a clear one, but even little suggestions about the way combat works, the way economics work, the way politics works. Players have come up with suggestions in every area. Like a very good one that so if you've played the game for any length of time, you'll know that one of the issues that'll face you is that your vassals are quite unruly. You don't have a lot of control over them, because this is a feudal kind of culture where your own vassals are fairly independent. So they can start fighting between themselves. And you don't have a lot of tools to manage that. And this is the problem even I've struggled with. What tool can I give the player for them to try to manage that? And just a few weeks ago, a player suggested that maybe the game could have some kind of action where you set up a negotiation between two of your vassals to try to create a rapprochement or something of the sort. Now, that was a great idea. Never had that. Ooh. And I'm really trying to look at it to see if there's some way I can work something like that in, because that would deal with that would be a really nice tool to give to the player. So what I found is that every player that comes into the game, they immediately hit a few things and they go, oh, that could be like that. That could be like that. And thankfully, a lot of players then come into the Discord or go on Steam and give me those ideas. And the problem I have, if anything, is the opposite, which is I've got so many and so little time to put all of that in. But it's a good problem to have.
No, that is really great to hear. It sounds like you're getting a lot of really good, solid feedback from players, which we have found is one of the most valuable parts of any early access period is the feedback. And it sounds like you're taking it really well. And it sounds like you're getting a lot of it, which is great. Thorsten here in the chat, I don't know if you saw, but he's been playing for like at least 70 hours, which is, wow, that's amazing. And good. And he says 10 worlds away from winning the game, and his vassals started to rebel.
Yeah, You have to watch your political standing because you can be close to the game. The game, part of one of the core mechanics of the game is that you have a political standing, a reputation, and it almost doesn't matter how powerful you are. If you wreck your reputation, everyone will abandon you. So it's like another dynamic you need to take into account because it focuses so much on the politics. Your standing is so important. So yeah, that can definitely happen, and it does tend to happen, especially before you, because a lot of players come into the game and they think of it a little bit like a more standard paint the map simulator, I suppose, where once you conquer a system, it's basically yours. But that's not the case. If you act dastardly, then no one will stay loyal to you for very long.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I play this game, or any game like this, but especially games like this, when I play, I don't know if you ever heard of the comedian John Mulaney, but he has a bit where he just wants everyone to like him so much all the time. He'll walk around wanting everyone to like him so much. His wife says he's trying to run for mayor of nothing. And that's how I feel when I'm playing this game. I'm like, I want everyone to be happy and like me. Why can't you all like me? And you can't do that, though. You can't. I mean...
No, it's this balancing act where you kind of have to... You're always going to make people angry, and you're always going to commit dishonorable acts because if you declare war, it's rare that you find the right excuse to declare war so that no one thinks you're being dishonorable about it. Sometimes it'll happen, like you might have a claim, or you discover, or a secret is revealed that reveals that someone has done something very nasty themselves, and so it gives you an excuse to attack them. But by and large, you have to balance that with kind of being ruthless at the right time and taking the right risks.
Yeah, because timing is an issue, isn't it, in this game as well? It's not just about making the right moves, but when to make the right moves as well. Because, there might be a mix of these people like you and these people don't, but these people like you more, so... You do a certain,
It all rests on this honor system that the game has, which is one of the systems that I'm particularly proud of. It's this formalization of a process where when you do something that everyone thinks is unjust, you don't just make everyone angry because you've been dishonorable, but you also create a grievance, which is like a permanent record in the game. And if someone does something unjust against you, you've got a grievance against them, and vice versa. But then the way it works is that if someone has a grievance against you, then they can do things which are normally unjust against you, but the court of public opinion will go, well, that's fair enough. So, like, to give you an example, let's say if you were to declare war on someone, that would be unjust, and everyone would think you're the bad guy. But if you, for example, discover that your son was murdered by the Duke of a nearby faction, and you reveal that information publicly, he looks like a bad guy, and you've got now a grievance against him. And if you declare war, everyone goes, well, that's fair enough.
You have casus belli.
Exactly, but the casus belli is not just based on claims, it's based on this whole anything that can happen in the political and personal realm. So, he could be having an affair with your wife, and if you discover that, that's a casus belli. See, it's much richer, and the other dimension to it is that you get this whole escalation process where you're like the master of a feudal kingdom. So your subjects come to you with petitions to give them justice when they've been wronged, but they can't do anything about it. So in the example I said, where if the Duke of a nearby faction has had an affair with your wife and you discover that, well, you've got an excuse to attack him. But if the Duke had an affair with the wife of one of the rulers, one of the barons in your kingdom, the baron can't really attack him. He has no way of seeking vengeance. So instead he comes to you and charges you to deal with that injustice. Now you've got a casus belli against the Duke. You've also got a kind of a political pressure to deal something with it. So there's like the other element of conflict where if the Duke was your friend and you didn't actually want to attack him, now you're stuck on the horns of a dilemma where if you don't do something against him to punish him, you're going to look like you don't care about justice, like you are covering for his sins. So you can see how this kind of honor system is at the heart of a lot of the political intrigue of the game.
Yeah,
I would word that as it's not just political; it's personal.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's kind of why the feudal culture was key to the game, because kind of the personal and the political are basically the same thing in that kind of feudal setting.
So is that like a system that permeates throughout the entire core of the game? It sounds like it is, and it sounds like it's one of the many things the game keeps track of. Because as the more I played this, the more I'm like, because there's so many moving parts, like to this game. How do you manage to keep track of all these different personalities and how not only do they feel about you, but how they feel about each other and all their personal histories and all that? I mean, there's just a massive amount of data happening here.
It is one of the technical challenges of the game, and especially because very early on, I wanted to go into the direction where the game, like when you're building a game like this, one of the challenges you have is not every character in the game can have a life as rich as the player, simply because there are performance constraints. There's only so much you can simulate at any one time, and I've actually done a lot to make characters have so that characters are having their own lives, even when you're not even seeing them, because they're outside of your kind of field of vision, even when they're like in a faction that hasn't been revealed yet. But there's obviously a balance you have to keep with that, and there are, there's only so much that you can do without bogging down the game completely.
Yeah, but even with those limitations, these characters, they feel full. They feel like as realistic as a computer game AI can get. They like they'll get drunk, they'll be happy, they'll get pregnant, they'll like all this different stuff, and it's great. It like there's so much texture going on here that is that you don't see in a lot of other space strategy games, because one, they're not character driven, but two, they're so macro that all this kind of political stuff is abstracted.
Absolutely, and kind of what I'm trying to do with Star Dynasties is I'm trying to make the player interested in this drama and the life stories of the characters around them. Like the game has several hundred, a couple of thousand characters at any one time, but you won't know of them all. And even if you did, there's obviously no way you could keep track of them. You at most you're going to keep track of the key characters in your empire and close to it, and maybe your personal family. And a lot of the game is about, a lot of the technical challenges in the game have been about how to not overwhelm you with that information, but at the same time make it as real as possible. Because one of the challenges when you start the game is that you're going to have members of your family, you're already going to have a small empire with people around you, and there's so many characters to learn about and so many things that can happen, and you can't just give the player everything, because that would just overwhelm them. And to be honest, a lot of it isn't that interesting. If if a random character from far away from your empire has a child or grows up, comes of age, gets ill, you don't care about any of that stuff. There's thousands of these little events going on in the background that you don't care. What you care about is the real salient, dramatic events that happen to your nearest and dearest, or to the people that are your rivals and allies in the political dimension. And one of the biggest challenges that I've had with the game, and it's something that I'm still kind of fighting with and improving as we go forward, is how does the game know which slice of information to actually give you? How does it know that when a character gets sick, you care about it if it was your son or the head of or your general that you're about to send on a major adventure? But obviously, if it's someone unimportant, you honestly don't care. How does it know that, and how does it figure that out? And it's made even a more complex challenge by the fact that is different on a player-by-player basis. Some players care more about the military strategic side of the game, and maybe they care less about the role-playing elements. And some people care more about the role-playing elements and more about the family side of the game. So that's one of the big things that the game has to struggle with.
So how do you do that? Is there like some kind of like, this is how much I care about a person value or something like that? Like, how do you determine how much a player should care about a specific individual in the game?
That's definitely part of it. So internally, the game kind of tries to make an assessment of how important each character is to you, and you can even tweak that yourself. So in the interface, there's a little toggle button for every character. So you can go on a character and say, I care about this character more than the game thinks I do. So show me more what happens to this character, or show me less. Why are you showing me this stuff? And that's then mixed with each event and update that can happen in the game. It's got its own kind of little importance calculation that kind of merges with the data about the characters that it picks up. And then all that is evaluated to see if the update is above a threshold or below a threshold. And you can even modify that threshold. So if you're playing the game and I'm getting too much detail, I don't want this much, you can turn that down. And and that's obviously invaluable, especially as we continue to get the balance right through early access. It's a little bit like a Facebook algorithm. How does Facebook know what events what posts you're going to care about?
Well, I think
maybe not as complex as that.
I think you're doing a better job than Facebook, because Facebook is doing a terrible job in that regard. Honestly, so I think you're doing maybe by keeping it simpler, you're doing a better job than Facebook. I don't know.
I guess Facebook doesn't understand what the posts contain, but at least the game does.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know, but it's like there are certain people I'll miss like a bevy of posts from them because Facebook didn't think I cared about. Like, come on, Facebook, stop it! Stop getting in my way. I guess that's
you assign weight to how much you care about someone. So it's very much I love you exactly this much, but not as much as this person.
Yes, exactly. The game kind of it assigns everyone an importance value, and that importance value kind of has a certain standard pattern. Like your spouse and your heir, they're always at the, especially if they're in your immediate influence, like immediately in your house or in your empire, it assigns them the highest importance value. And then people like your direct vassals have an importance value, and then as people get further away from your empire or have less important roles, their importance goes down. But obviously, it's not perfect. It's not like so. Sometimes you might something might happen to a character, and you just kind of build this narrative in your head, and you're like interested what's happening to them, or maybe you've got this duke that you've been fighting with for a few years, and you really hate their guts, and then when they fall from power, the game goes, well, they're not important anymore, but you want to keep seeing what happens to them just because you've got it out for them now, for no other reason than that. So you can adjust the importance level if you want.
Another thing I really love is you can set, you can like kind of focus on one character. You can put them on the side there, and then you can see how other characters feel about this one character.
It's absolutely central to the game because so much of it is driven by those opinions.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that because sometimes you'd be like, I'm not sure how I like this guy. You know, this guy who is stooping my wife. How do other people feel about this guy? And then you find a lot of people like him and like, oh God, okay. I guess I can't move against him yet because he's liked by so many people. God darn it. Fine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and the game gives you some tools to deal with that. Like you can obviously do your own skullduggery against. You can try to defame people, or you can try to assassinate them, and things like that.
I sent him off to this far-flung world off to the other side of the map that like fell out with its empire, and like no, it was not any empire at all. So I'm like, you go over there and try to make a claim on that system, way over there. Just get out of the house.
The equivalent of sending them to Antarctica.
Basically, that's exactly what I did. I was like, I have this option. Just get them away.
And the game will actually take that into account. Now, see, this is the kind of stuff that is really hard to tell the player because where would you even tell the player this information? But if you do send them away, the system that determines whether they're still in love is likelier to say they're going to fall out of love. And the game's full of these little things that's really hard to communicate to the player. So I've always kind of adopted an approach of hopefully the player will act in ways that are intuitively correct, and the game will reflect their expectations of how reality would behave.
That's got to be tough, though, right?
There's only so far you can take it in practice because obviously reality is so complex. Every situation, there's a million and one ways it could vary. But, well, you go as far as you can.
And I gotta say, your game does take a lot into account, like more than a lot of other games like this, which makes it so fun and fluid. I mean, because you get tired of just moving spaceships around. You know what I mean? You get tired of, oh, I'm just going to colonize that planet, and that planet's going to be mine forever, and I don't have to worry about it, except that they have enough food, or whatever.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that because when I originally had the idea for Star Dynasties, I was big into 4X, and all I was thinking at the time was, wouldn't it be cool if 4X also had a character component? But by the time I actually got around to starting the project, I had played so many 4Xs that I was also thinking, you know what? I'm a little bit bored of moving units around the map. I just want to get the political side. I just want to focus on the drama. And yeah.
Yeah, I love, and I'm glad not only your game, but we're getting more games that are letting you do that. Because I'm in any game, not just 4X games, but I don't know about you, but I'm just getting tired of moving units around a map. I'm really getting tired of it. I want to deal with the bigger, like character driven stuff like this, and we're getting more and more games that are letting you do that, which is nice, like yours and Real Politics and Stellar Monarch and a few others. Where we have to deal with less about moving things around a map and more about dealing with other characters and dealing with individuals, which I think is always more interesting than just moving ships around a map.
I think there's kind of space for all games. Like, you know what I mean? I do love a good strategy game that just focuses on the conquest as well. But, sometimes you're in one mood and sometimes you're in another.
Yeah, I think I'm in a phase right now where it's just like, I don't want to move. Like, I can't play a Paradox game right now. Like, people keep telling me how good, like, Hearts of Iron 4 is, and I'm like, I look at it, and I'm like, no. No, I can't do it. Not right now. I just can't do that right now. I'm at a point where I have a lot less patience. So like I want like give me a first person shooter over a tactical game. You know what I mean? You know, let me go in
I
there
have
and-
been stuck. I have been stuck in this dilemma for a while where I do love strategy games and games that are more involved that way. But because I have so little time,
Yeah.
you kind of get a great strategy game and you're like, I would love to play this, but how am I going to find the time to really learn it inside out?
Oh my god, I know. Like I'll get these strategy games and I'll play them for on a stream or something for a little bit. I'm like, this is great. I am never gonna have time to play this ever again.
And it's not even that the game is bad, because it's not. It's a good game. You just know you will, because of the way that you stream stuff, and you have to keep on bouncing between all these other games. There's just never going to be enough time to bounce back around to it.
No. I have a very hard time focusing on one game for any particular period of time. Very hard time. So yeah, if a game doesn't grab me within an hour or two, I'm like, okay, if you look at my Steam library, you'll see that 95% of the games I've played have under 5 hours of playtime. Which is a little sad.
What it's also made me appreciate more games, I guess, that are also more narrative driven, because you can they do have less time commitment sometimes, and sometimes you just don't have the time to do anything else.
And the nice thing about your game is it's not a set story, but you could say it's narrative driven, but you're making the narrative as you go.
It's absolutely meant to build a story in your mind with the characters and the cast you have. So, you know, the experience I want to give to the player is that they think, this is my life, my story. These are all the events that happened to me and to the people that I cared about, and to the villains and the heroes in this piece. And you build that through you know, the events that kind of link, the way they link together, and the way the game what happens in the game. That's going to build your own story.
Oh wow, you have a big compliment here in the chat. Thorsten says even when he would usually rage quit because he's down to only 2 systems, he keeps playing in your game. He wants to dig himself out of that hole. That is right there.
That is really nice to hear.
That's a huge compliment, because I'm the same way. Like if I get to a certain point, I'm like, no, I'm gonna lose. I'm done. I'll just start over. You know.
While playtesting the game, I have found that sometimes it's a lot of fun when you're in those situations. Like one of the things that's well, in fact, actually, this is one of the things I've managed to deal with more recently. But in an earlier iteration of the game, you never started out as a vassal of a larger empire. And then I discovered through playing the game that actually it was a lot of fun when you were forced sometimes to become a vassal, because it changed your well, it changed what mattered. Now it gave you the problem of how am I going to become independent and how I'm going to rebel. So sometimes you do get the most fun when things go against you. In fact, actually, I would go so far as to say that if you can't take setbacks, you might find Star Dynasties a hard game to play, because there's always that to and fro. Sometimes things will go against you, because, you know, it's trying to capture that dynamic of, I guess, a more realistic narrative.
And it would be unrealistic if you were winning all the time. At that point, why are you even playing? Because if you don't have those setbacks, then what's the point?
Yeah, if it was just one march to victory, that would be pretty boring.
But I think what people are saying is that a lot of times people don't feel the challenge is worth it. Like you'll get to a point and you'll be like, "No, I'm done. I'm gonna start over because I feel I've gotten to a point where the time is not worth the effort. It's not worth putting in the time to try and dig myself out of this." But it sounds like with this game, the challenge actually adds to the fun, which is rare. You know, there aren't a lot of games where it's like, okay, I'm losing. How do I dig myself out of this? You know,
it's
well,
also
that's more emergent, Brian.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that's more emergent gameplay in terms of, well, yeah, if you can't find a way to dig yourself out, if that is a lose state, then you're going to do everything you can to avoid that in future games, or you're just not going to play. If there is a way to get out of it and you can figure that out, that's emergent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think there's another dynamic as well in Star Dynasties, which is if you look at many games, you're playing within an environment where if you fall too far behind, there is no way to come back. So in your typical 4X, if you fall behind drastically, you just can't come back because the technology delta becomes too large, and the rolling ball of strength that gets accumulated by your opponents is just too hard to overcome. Star Dynasties is coming at this from a different angle. So the world is trying to be a little bit more realistic. So the other dukes that you're playing with, they're not like direct competitors like it is in Civ, where you're clearly set up to be playing against 7 other players or what have you. Instead, they're just characters in a game. And some of them might not even be trying to outright conquer the universe because they're more interested in, whatever pleasures they're getting. So even if you fall behind, there's usually, not always, I mean, if you really become a villain and everyone hates you, then everyone will relish wiping you off the map. But if you just fall behind, or if you have a setback, and like Torsten has said here, went back down to perhaps 2 systems, but that allowed him to hang on. And then there will be opportunities to come back into the game. A nearby baron might become disenchanted with their own duke, and you track them to your empire. So there's the opportunity to rise, fall, but then rise again.
And I guess that's one thing your game is really great at, is providing those opportunities. Because in a more traditional kind of 4X, like the opportunities are really limited. You're fighting, you're colonizing or whatever, or you're making like a very generic trade treaty. But here it's like, oh wait, maybe these guys are also independent over here. Maybe if we merge together, we can become a little more powerful, and then you kind of build the blocks back up, So I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's a fundamental problem of like the 4X formula, that you're kind of building it's like an engine building game that they're called. And because of the way they work, in fact, 4X games are very hard to balance in a way that you can come back unless if you're losing. It's one of the biggest problems that they've had. You start to win, and then you tend to win. And kind of with Star Dynasties, that's something I've been consciously trying to remember. With Star Dynasties, your stated goal is to become the most kind of powerful, the most venerated, I suppose, political house in the galaxy. But the game isn't trying to kind of just get you to paint the map, because the experience of the game is the stories that come out as you're trying to achieve that. So, the betrayals, the rise and fall. So if it had the same mechanics that kind of created that feedback loop that you get in 4X, where you build something and that gives you more resources to build the next something, and then that gives you a non-linear increase in your power, then you would lose the opportunity to create those more fluid stories.
No, that makes sense. I wanted to ask, I've never finished a game. I don't finish games very often, but like when you finish a game, does it like show you, is there like a an end game screen that like tells your story? Like
there is a screen that gives you some stats about the various dukes you've played through in your lineage. There's there has been a suggestion multiple times to have the game kind of cherry pick the events that have happened throughout the game and present them as a kind of history.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Yeah,
and there's a technical challenge to that I haven't yet quite managed to overcome, and it ties back to what we were saying earlier, which is how does the game know which are the important events that happen to you? And right now, the whole kind of algorithm and importance system is very focused about solving the immediate problem of whether it should show you a piece of information as it happens. And it's unfortunately not appropriate as it is to then take a look at 100 years of history and pick out the really important stuff from that 100 years. So I'd love to do it one day, but that would be its own challenge.
Yeah, because it would be fun to go back and like kind of read those stories.
Absolutely.
Because that's what this game is doing. It's making these stories based on your character and all these other characters. And it would just be really fun to go back and read that as like kind of like a log or a story or something. That would be really fun. But I told
the chronicle of key events in this family's history.
Yeah, exactly.
But I totally get how that would be a challenge. Because what do you pick and, blah, blah. Yeah, I totally get that.
And you may not even know that something is a key event until much later because, well, events can tend to steamroll. That one seemingly inconsequential thing leads to this steamrolling effect down the line that you would not have predicted to be a key event.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've brought in a dimension that is well beyond our current ability to work out.
Oh man. So my brain is getting into mush here. So, how long do you anticipate the early access period lasting? Do you have any like idea about, any kind of roadmap in your head or anything like that?
We're planning to finish the EA period in Q3 of this year. So we're not any more specific than that. We've got 3 major updates that we're planning to the game, and that includes the full release. We've got a particular update planned for that. So what we're planning to do is in May to bring out a standalone tool, a story events editor that will allow players to add their own story events to the game. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that to see what people will come up with to add to the game.
And wait, are these just for your stories, or will the game in general be able to pull from these user created stories?
Well, there'll be mods that you can get and add to your game.
Oh, okay.
As you wish.
Okay. Kind of like Steam Workshop.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at Steam Workshop integration at the moment, and we'll see. Ideally, I would like to do it that way.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing because you never know what people are going to come up with, and there are probably some history buffs up there are going to be like, I'm going to model everything that happened in the Prussian Empire. And put all these events in there that happened in the Prussian Empire.
I mean, honestly, I'm really looking forward to that to see what people will come up with.
Because amazing, yeah.
I mean, as a game designer, part of the reason, part of the fun for me is to get surprised by my own game, and I think one good way to do it is to see what players will come up with when they're given access to that tool. I'm reading Last Shogun's comment.
Yeah. There was a space mod for CK2. I tried it and it wasn't bad, but it felt like it fell out of development. Like it just stopped being developed, which is a shame.
and I think the other things that we've got in mind. So the editor is the first thing we've got on our
That
plan.
sounds amazing. That editor sounds amazing. That's a wonderful idea.
Excellent. The second thing we've got in mind is what we're calling expedition events. So these expedition events, they're about bringing the sci-fi element of the game to life in a stronger way than it is now. And this civilization in Star Dynasties, it exists within the ruins of a previous one, of a near future, early colonization era in human history before there was a major collapse. So the civilization in Star Dynasties, it exists within this kind of the shell, and it doesn't really understand the technology that it uses. I mean, it understands that technology is what allows it to survive, and that is a source of power. And as a ruler, you are motivated to acquire as much of this mysterious, unknown, essentially black box technology that's still around from before the collapse. And what this update will be is it will add these stories to the game where you might discover legacy technology, and they'll interact with the story that's going on in your own world in interesting ways. Like a key example might be that you discover a still half functioning cloning chamber. And you might be tempted to try it out on some characters in your house, and now you've got two characters, which you might clone your wife and see what stories that ends up generating in the game. So that's the second major update. These sci-fi stories around the technological remnants of the previous civilization.
God, now you just want me to have someone make a sci-fi version of Multiplicity. The movie, the Michael Keaton movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I haven't seen it. But how do you see it? What's the parallel?
Oh, it's basically Michael Keaton gets cloned multiple times because he's so busy, and he finds a way to clone himself. And he gets cloned like 3 or 4 times, and each clone is very different. So it's basically like 4 Michael Keatons. And it's an amazing movie. Just a side note. So when you talked about cloning your wife, the immediate thing I thought was like that Multiplicity was the very first thing I thought of. So
I'm gonna have to watch the movie before I make the example again.
It's a great movie.
with very different personalities.
Very
to
different.
Them.
Yeah, very different. And it's also funny because like they started making copies of copies, and so that kind of degrades the copies. It's just, so one of the Michael Keatons is not quite all there. It's
okay.
It's so freaking amazing. It's oh my god, yeah. So that's just
sounds pretty funny.
Oh, it is. It really holds up. It really holds up. Yeah, I showed it to my wife for the first time a few years ago, and she really enjoyed it. Because I'm a huge Michael Keaton fan, so like, I'll find any excuse to drag him up. And so you were saying, I'm sorry, that was a little tangent. So you had your expeditions, you were saying.
Oh yeah, I think I pretty much summed them up. And then the last major update, which will coincide with full release, is we're planning to add a system of colony improvements to the game. So right now, you can increase the level of investment in your colonies, and that has a direct bearing on your economic income and the military that you can call on. But we want to make that a little bit more detailed. So remember, in the setting, you're not actually building new things because you're inhabiting these still surviving colonies from before the collapse. But you do have the capacity to repair installations that have kind of fallen derelict or out of use And we kind of want to make that a bit more tangible, so that you will have separate installations within a colony that you can kind of bring back online, and they'll give you certain bonuses, or they'll have certain effects on your empire. And there will also be a political dimension, because you might have to assign a particular noble to take care of a particular installation, which then might create its own drama.
Damn.
Would that also tie into the aforementioned sci-fi element of expeditions, that based on what you have found in those, you might have more options for what you can bring back online?
I think the easy answer to that is yes, because the way I see expeditions is that it will interact with just about every other system in the game. So and I'm absolutely off the cuff here, but for example, one of the expeditions events could be that you discover some secret installation that you hadn't known of before. So that will then give you and it will interact with the way you might then improve that colony, or it might give you some particularly special and unique bonus for that colony.
All right, that's fair enough.
That sounds awesome. Well, it's about time to wrap up. So, folks, the game we're talking about today is called Star Dynasties. It's currently in early access, even though it is very well fleshed out and stable for an early access title. It did not feel, when I played it, like an early access title at all. And people in the chat can confirm that. But right now it is in early access. It's going to come out of early access next quarter. I think we're in quarter 2 right now, right? Yeah. So I can never keep track of when the quarters are. I gotta count in my brain, like January, February, March. Okay, April is quarter.
We're still in March 2020 here. You know that, right?
No, we're not. Stop it! Damn it! No! God damn it! No, we have to put that behind us. So yeah, hopefully the game will be out of early access later this year. We'll probably have to have you back once it's out of early access.
I would love to be back and have another chat with you.
Because we kind of like to do not a post-mortem, but we like to we love to hear the road to 1.0. We love to talk about that. And so it's not technically a post-mortem, but we do love to hear about how early access went and things like that. Because I think it's good, not just for us, but for other developers to hear how early access went. So for people. So
absolutely, and I'll be more than happy to come and share what went right and what went wrong, I'm sure.
Oh, we will love to talk about that. So, folks, later today, if I have any voice left and if I have any energy left, I'll be streaming this afternoon Nova Mundi, which is some kind of strategy game thing, which looks kind of fun. And then next week on the show, we're going to be back to our afternoon time slot to welcome back Chris Park, the designer and developer of AI War 2. Not only did AI War 2 just get dozens and dozens of huge updates, it's about to get multiplayer, and it's about to get a new DLC pack. So lots of stuff going on with AI War 2. But Glenn, I want to thank you so much for coming back on and talking to us about Star Dynasties. Guys, it's a great game. Even though it's an early access, don't let that deter you. It is great. It is stable. It is fun. It is really unique, because even though there are some other character-driven strategy games, there are some things to this one that really stand out. And so please do check it out. At the very least, wishlist it, because developers do see how many people wishlist their games, and it's like, it is a nice thing to see more people wishlisting a game. I can tell you that from personal experience with Starfleet 2. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Glenn, for hanging out with us. Folks, thank you so much for a very active chat this morning. It's been great. And we'll see you back here, if my voice holds out, later today for some Nova Mundi. Have a great one, y'all. Bye-bye.